What's up, everybody? We got a Barca fan and a Madrid fan from the United States in the chat. Week 4 in La Liga. We're going to kick off with the Real Madrid game. The only perfect team left in the league, 12 points out of 12 points possible. And Fern, what are your thoughts on the game? What do you think about Madrid versus Real Betis?
I thought it was an interesting game. I mean, I'll be honest. Even though they remain the only perfect team in the league, I, they don't. They're not convincing to me in terms of being a consistent, solid team. Um, we've talked about some of the things before, and one of the things I mentioned to you is that it seems like they have, and I noticed this more last week than this week. There are these like lulls in Madrid's play that allow the other team to stay in the game and get a lot of chances. And we talked about Madrid's defense and how last week with Rudiger in the center paired with Militao, how it didn't really look as good because Alaba with his experience and uh, game soccer IQ is just able to clean up a lot of mistakes. But in this game, I thought Madrid's defense started off pretty shaky as well, and that was with Alaba still in the middle. Mendy on the left instead of Alaba this week. I don't know. They didn't seem to be. I don't know. Madrid, as good as they are, it feels more like they have a few star players that kind of get everything going for them instead of looking like a solid team. And with the departure of Casemiro, Chouameni has done a great job stepping in the middle. I think you guys have a real star with him, which is why I think the middle kind of looks as solid as it is. But I said last week that I thought Camavinga should be starting over Cruz or Modric, but I don't know. He started off shaky as well. He seems to, at least in my opinion, be a better change of pace coming off the bench than as a starter.
So it's actually your interpretation right now is hilarious because it's kind of the opposite of what my interpretation of the game was. But we'll go point by point.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my first thing is like, first of all, I was really excited for this game because of who we were playing, Real Betis. Before coming into the game, it was the only other team that was 3-0, so it was going to be the biggest test for us. And it was our first home game, so gotta
It wasn't a
christen
convincing win, in my opinion.
we got to christen the Bernabeu with a win. I thought it was actually one of Madrid's best performances of the four so far in La Liga because of who we were playing. Number one, I also give the caveat that Fakir went down like in the 15th minute, who was one of their best players.
If not their best player.
So we caught a lucky break on that one. So who knows how much of a difference that would have made in the game. But Real Madrid got off to a hot start, scoring like in the first 12 minutes of the game. Vinny with another finish, chipped the goalkeeper off of a long ball from Alaba. And then I thought our defense looked pretty good all game, honestly. Other than we had one mental lapse in the 15th minute where they scored a goal. And it was such a bullshit goal, like off a throw in, the whole defense was sleeping, and then they just one pass in the box and then they scored. But I thought other than that goal, I really don't think Betis was that threatening on our goal for the whole game, honestly.
Sure, I don't disagree with you. And by the way, just a quick point. I don't. I've noticed this for like a couple years now, and this is a tangent. Like we don't have to really talk about this, but I feel like throw-in rules are just they don't matter in professionals, in the pros,
You mean
because
like in AYSO you have to have like perfect form for the
yeah,
throw?
no, seriously. Like if we were playing, if that goal had happened in any of our like home rec leagues or even in high school or something like that, it wouldn't have counted. That foot came so far off the ground, his back leg on the throw in. I don't know if you noticed it. It's just so common these days in throw ins that
I don't think people really care about that.
sure, but like if you're going by the rule book, that shouldn't have been a goal for Betis. But anyway, so look, I see what you're saying, but for me, I thought Betis was more focused on limiting damage than actually going after Madrid. So I think the only reason that it looked like Madrid was pressing forward more and looked like they were controlling the middle is because every time the ball, first of all, they weren't pushing super far up on the attack, and when Madrid got the ball, they were more focused on getting in front of the ball, between the ball and goal, than actually fighting the ball in the middle. Last week against who did you guys play last week?
We played Espanol.
Espanyol. We even talked about how the game was wide open, and it had a lot to do with Madrid's mental lapses, but also Espanyol looked like they didn't really have too much to lose. They were pressing forward, they were fighting the ball in the middle, and I thought that Madrid's play, at least at the beginning, was sloppy in the middle. A lot of their chances come from long balls down the wings or over the top. It's not that much creating in the center of the field and going out that way. I thought Kamavinga looked a little slow to start. I thought you know, even Benzema didn't look great in the game. Your attack really is very dependent on Vinny being able to do what Vinny does by tearing down that wing. And honestly, what I will say, and I think this is a positive for you guys, and I think it's a change that should be made. When Valverde came in, the middle looked a lot more stable. And
Yep.
I know that you guys really haven't had a choice on the wing, but I thought Rodrigo looked good. I thought he looked good in that game. I think he's shedding some of his, young boy tendencies when, you're starting as a young kid on a big team and, nerves can get the best of you or and whatnot. So I think that he's kind of shedding some of those. He looks like a good winger, and he's able to create on the wing much more than Valverde is.
Yep.
For as great as Valverde filled in that void that you guys had at right wing, I think you guys should consider starting Rodrigo there, even if he's not tracking back as much or as much of a workhorse as Valverde is, because you could use that much, much more in the middle, especially with old heads like Cruz and Modric who can't do that anymore. Modric used to be one of the biggest workhorses in the game, not so much anymore. So if you have someone like Valverde there, and it even allows for Camavinga to make those mistakes that I thought he was making in the middle this week, because he can clean up. You have Chouameni who can clean up. And
Okay.
you mentioned last week that Chouameni is much more technical in the middle than Casemiro was, even though he's just as hungry. So with that trio in the middle, I think there's a lot of positives that can come from that instead of starting Valverde on the wing
Okay. Okay.
and expecting Cruz and
All right.
Modric to be the cleanup guys.
Okay. You said a lot right there. I want to start a lot of the points I want to hit on, but I want to start with the front three for Madrid. So the front three this week, it was Vinny Benz, Rodrigo. Valverde had been starting in that right winger slot. He's not a true right winger, but he seemed to be the most dynamic option that we had. Rodrigo is coming for that starting spot, man, down
Yeah,
the right wing.
he played
I
well.
I was a little bit I because of of the course of last season and also how we started off this season, basically Camavinga and Rodrigo coming off the bench and being an impact sub to change the course of the game in the second half. I was thinking that he might kind of get like doomed into that role for the season, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for him considering how young he still is. But he's coming for that starting spot. My main concern about Rodrigo had always been his ability to be consistent and high tempo for 90 minutes. You put him in for 20 minutes at the end, he can go all out, no question asked. But when you're a starter, you need to have not only like the ability and technical prowess and all that, but you also have to have mental
Yeah,
concentration, no lapses in concentration, which is a big factor to be promoted to the starting position. Rodrigo looked good, man. Valverde on the right wing, the thing that makes him so exceptional at that position is really his work rate and the fact that he can be up and down the field all game 90 minutes. He can help out with the attack and help out with the defense, but we do lose a little bit of the threading the eye of the needle passes, putting in like a beautiful cross. And Rodrigo, he's gifted with a natural ability for scoring goals. He was always there. He's always been there with the final product, whether it's an assist or a goal. That's never been an issue for Rodrigo. And now he's seeming to really have matured into a player that can do the 90 minutes and do his job for 90 minutes and not stray too far off the course and be effective in producing in the final third. So Rodrigo's coming for that starting spot. I agree. And I'll touch more about how that will affect Valverde, but just your thoughts on that.
No, I agree. I thought he played well. I think that he had the winning goal on in the game. He did well down the wing, and like I said, he is able to create much better than, in my opinion, much better than Valverde, because even though Valverde has the vision on the wing, there's, unless you're like a threading cross on the ground or something like that, you know, like you said, uh, threading the pin, and threading those passes in between the lines is extremely important, and those kinds of passes come from the middle, not really from the wings. And his Rodrigo's dribbling ability allows him to create space for himself to get those crosses off. He can create space to give himself at least a few more seconds to either play the ball back or find another lane to dribble forward or get the cross off. And
Yeah.
it didn't seem like Valverde, he's not a bad dribbler, but he's not as technical and skillful as Rodrigo is, or as,
Valverde is more like kick the ball 20 yards in front of
and
you
then and
and
chase after it. Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
gonna get there before the defender.
Exactly. He's not as he doesn't have as much flair. Not that you need flair, but it gives you more time because defenders have to guess what you're doing next. With Valverde, you kind of know, and if you're getting beat by him, it's probably because of pace,
Right.
because Valverde is fast. And in the when I saw him in the middle, like you said, helping in the back, and the 90-minute work rate going up and down, I think Real Madrid needs more of that in the middle than on the wings, because um yeah, I mean, out on the right you have, who do you have? Carvajal, and who else?
It's just
Vasquez. You started Vasquez.
yeah.
So Valverde helps in that sense in terms
But
of being
I
able
think
to.
he can do that as the right
Yeah, no,
center
agreed.
mid,
No, and
as the
that's
right
and that
center mid.
I agree, and that's what I was about to say, is that when he has to track back from the 18-yard line on the other side of the field all the way back to help the right back, it really doesn't make sense, because then Real Madrid's style is counter. So, or at least that's a big part of their game. So when you see him do that and then have to race up the field again, or get a midfielder out of position to race up the field and help on the wing, it doesn't make sense, because again, it's going to create an over reliance on Vinny, which I think you guys might already be tending to. I think you
No,
guys might
no.
already be tending to over rely on Vinny. I think that honestly, if Vinny goes down, I think you guys are in trouble, because I mean, as great as Rodrigo can be, he's not Vinny.
No,
And
I agree. I agree though. I agree that having Rodrigo there, and especially he often floats, to Vinny's side, to the left side, and just
Mhm.
creates an overload on that side, which is impossible for the defense to deal with. So Rodrigo does allow more creativity in the offense than Valverde does. The other last point we had to bring up about the front three is look, Benzema is having a dip of form right now. He started off the season. I mean, he had
Hot.
in 4 goals, he
Hot.
has no, in 4 games, he has 3 goals, but his performances haven't been great. He did save us, in the last game against Espanyol, and scoring 2 late goals to get us to 3 points. But his performances have not been up to par, and it's really been Vinny that's carrying the weight of the offense. So I have no concern, that Benzema is like gonna have a complete fall off year. I don't know if he'll be able to replicate what he did last year, just because I think that was the peak of his career. Um, but it has to be said, we need to get Benzema back to top form pretty soon, or else it's going to be all on Vinny.
And the thing is, you have to consider top form is going to decline every year just because he's old.
Yeah,
That's just the fact of the matter, whether you like it or not. And I mean, there's like
but
one anomaly. There's one anomaly in history, and that's Ronaldo.
if you can get Benzema though, back to good form, and you have Vinny and Rodrigo starting on the wings, doing all the work, in terms of pulling the defense and running down the wings and all that. I mean, that's a great trio still.
Sure,
But
but that's what I was gonna get into next, is that even if you have uh, Benz in top form, if Vinny goes down, I think that changes everything
It
because
does.
a lot of what Bend is able to do works off of Vinny because of how good he is. And whether it's making the right runs down the wing, cutting inside behind defenders. And we've mentioned this before, Ben is a good creator. So he sees those passes, he's able to do that. But also, Vinny's a very skillful player, so he can work off of that as well. And I think, and I mentioned this to you before, I think Vinny's going to get hurt this season. I don't want that for him, but he's going to get.
Why are you putting that out into the universe, bro?
No, it's just because no, and I've told you this before. He, in my opinion, is starting to look like Hazard did when he was at Chelsea in the Premier League. Hazard was the most fouled player in the Premier League for a couple seasons, and with reason, because people couldn't handle him on the wing, and people can't handle Vinny on the wing. And in these early games, I've seen Vinny take some hard challenges, some out of frustration by these defenders. So, and you have to stop him somehow, some way. And some of these fouls are hard; they hit him hard. I think Vinny's going to take a beating this year if Madrid can't find a way to take the offensive load off of him, because right now I'd say it's about 60, 70% Vinny that's taking charge of that offense.
I agree. Vinny's gonna have to. I think he's been pretty good at his career, not getting injured so far. He's never had a major
Sure,
injury,
sure.
but as he takes more and more of the responsibility of the attack, he is going to need to learn how to take care of his body and maybe, I don't know, avoid certain situations or just make decisions for his health and for his ability to
No,
perform.
and the thing is, I don't even blame the kid for doing what he does because he's great at it. And you have at some point, making in terms of making a name for yourself, these are the kinds of things you have to do. But when it's just him on that team, it's gonna get bad. And who knows? Maybe his body can take it. Hazard's body took it very well for a few years, but then as he got older, his body started to break down because it's just constant pounding, pounding, pounding. So who knows? And you know, we see it now with Hazard. Not now because he doesn't play, but when he started his career with Madrid and even before that, his body was constantly in a state of injury. He missed so many games, in total probably missed a total of like 2 whole seasons just because of injuries, and not all at the same time obviously, but just in general. And we've seen he can't perform anymore like he used to because of that. He's slower, he's not as quick to change pace, he's not as dangerous, as threatening. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure Vinny will be very good for a long time, but who knows? I think that he might be one of these players that, not even in the latter stages, but around when Hazard's body starts to break down, if Madrid can't find a way to at least give him other people to work off of, or a player that's gonna get close to what he can do to give him a rest on lesser match days or cup games or things like that, I think he's gonna get hurt, and maybe not even a bad injury. Maybe he's gonna have to miss 2-3 weeks here, another week there, or what so have you. But I think it's gonna be a long season for Vinny.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. Got to get to the midfield now. So yesterday versus Betis lined up with Modric, Chouameni, and Camavinga in the midfield. Chouameni put on another clinic, another great performance by Chouameni. Modric doing his thing with clever link-up passes. He looked way better than he did in the previous game, in my opinion. And Camavinga, I kind of want to focus more on Camavinga right now. Camavinga is a great player, and he's 19 years old. I always have to remind myself the kid is 19. I don't think he's ready to be the every game starter yet. He's still
It was a bad start in my opinion.
he's one of the like he's a completely different player when he starts the game than when he comes off the bench. When he comes off the bench, the other team, a lot of the players are already tired. They've already it's different. Coming off the bench is just different as opposed to starting at the beginning of the game where everyone is fresh and everyone is locked in and ready to go. He makes mental mistakes a lot. Sometimes going in for a rash tackle that he doesn't necessarily have to go into. I think Camavinga is going to have more of an issue getting booked, for example, than Chouameni does. And then there's just sometimes where you can see he wants to play good, and sometimes it forces him to make like silly decisions at times that give away the possession of the ball in bad spots. And so he's going to have to clean that up a little bit So I was gonna say, I think I know after 4 seasons, I know what I want my starting lineup to be for Madrid now. I know what it is. I'll tell you that later. But I don't think Camavinga is ready to be a starter just yet.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that a big part of it, um, especially at his age, is that when you come on as a sub, the tempo and rhythm of the game is kind of already set, especially when you're coming on in the second half. Like you said, players are tired, and so you're a pair of fresh legs, so you can work off of that. But also, you're coming on 15, maybe 20 minutes into the second half. And so the tempo and rhythm is kind of already set. So you kind of get to work off of that, ease into it, feel it out, and then contribute with how fresh you are. When you're starting, it's on you to sort of set that pace, tempo, rhythm of the game. And like you said, he's 19, and I'm not sure that he's mentally able to do that yet because he's used to coming on when things are already rolling. Madrid usually are already in a good spot or kind of tending towards that as the game progresses because Madrid tends to be a second half team. So he kind of just jumps in there and adds a new element to that. And also, you're kind of taking out Modric or Cruz, who, even though the tempo's set, when you take out one of the slower veteran players and put in fresh young legs, he can kind of jump into it and then he just adds another element to that game
I think
versus when you're starting and you kind of are forced to set it. And one of the things that I noticed is that it was night and day when Valverde came on the field.
yeah,
Valverde can start a game, come in as a sub, and immediately change the game. He knows how to
right.
set a pace, he knows how to set a tempo, and even though he's been playing on the wing, he does that on the wing.
Yeah.
And he's a natural center midfielder, so I think he's much better equipped to do that in the middle, which is why to start off the episode I was saying I think you need to take a chance on Rodrigo, starting him on the wing, and slide Casemiro, Valverde into a starting spot in the middle.
Yeah, I think the thing with Kamavinga too is like in the second half of games, it seems to open up more all the time. There's more spaces
Yeah,
at the beginning of the game. Teams start off in their shape and they're pretty true to the shape at the beginning.
the
Unless
press is much faster and more
right.
tenacious.
And once you're getting like deep into the second half, there's naturally more space to exploit, and that's where Kamavinga thrives really. So he's gonna need to
Which he's
figure
gonna
out.
have to learn how to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a learning curve for him. I have no doubt he'll figure it out, but that's what he needs to work through right now. And I'm glad you mentioned Valverde because I think Valverde is the dude that has to slide in there to
for
be
sure.
the third midfielder, and then the starting midfield, in my opinion, should be Tchouaméni, Valverde, and Modric. And I think you'll have to swap out Kroos and Modric once in a while. But I think Modric complements them a little bit better. He's a little more clever, a little more skillful of the three. But yeah, and then even like with that, you still have Kamavinga on the bench to come in the second
Yeah,
half when you need him, which has been a key to Ancelotti's formula really for the last, the back half of last season and going into this season. It's, having the starting 11 that's solid will get you into a good position to win the game. And then you have one or two options off the bench that can rip the game apart and completely change the pace.
yeah, yeah. And again, I still think though that Madrid's middle is. I think it's still a work in progress, even with people like Modric and Cruz there. Um, I thought again that Madrid started a bit sloppy. The passing was off. It wasn't, and I'll say it again. The only reason, in my opinion, that it looked like they were controlling the middle is because uh, Betis rushed to get numbers in front of the ball, in between the ball and goal. So they played a deep line. It wasn't a high line. It was a deep line because they had most of the time about 7, 6 players behind in front of the ball when Madrid had it. They backed off of the middle and just allowed Madrid to have it there. I think that last week against Espanyol, it was a different game, much more wide open, and Espanyol was pressing.
Yeah.
So I think that some of it has to do with the youth. some of it has to do with
I will say
How
though,
old Cruz and Modric are. And I know the talent is there, but I think it's still a work in progress.
I will say though that Madrid could have scored like two or three
Sure,
more goals because we missed a
sure.
lot of big chances. So I think the 2-1 scoreline might not
16th minute classic Vinny. I loved it.
the 2-1 scoreline might not make it sound like it was an overwhelming performance.
Sure.
But the fact that Ben's even missed a wide open net too off of a Rodrigo pass early in the second half. So the game could have easily been 3 or 4 to 1 for Madrid, which is
Yeah, but
why
that's the way the game goes. If you're not going to be clinical, then you're gonna have to fight for those wins, or you might tie, you might lose.
that's true. But again, Madrid does just enough to win as champions do. So
Okay.